Hey everyone, I'm Scott Stokely, and this video is for all of you out there who have ever clicked a button and had a golf disc magically appear on your porch a couple days later, or who have walked into a store, picked a golf disc off the shelf, given the cashier money, and walked out with the disc. You kids today have no idea how easy you got it. The history of buying golf discs is rich and colorful, and simply buying the disc that you want is the exception, not the rule in our sport. For most of our lineage, that has not been our history. So I'm going to give you all a quick walkthrough of what it was like buying a golf disc for the past 50 years and how the times have changed. Forgive me in advance. I may get the actual year off. I mean, everything's going to be accurate, but at my age, I get a little bit foggy on the exact years. But this is basically how it was. So I'm going to start leading up to 1983, before the beveled edge disc, and everybody threw Whammo Frisbees up till the point where they started throwing Whammo golf Frisbees. This is where Whammo started adding weight to make their golf discs heavier. They created the Midnight Flyers, but you didn't buy Midnight Flyers in stores. Where you bought your Midnight Flyers was either at events, and there weren't that many events, or you bought them from a player who was enough of an entrepreneur to buy 50 Whammo Frisbees for $4 a piece, stuck them in the trunk of their car, and they would show up to the park periodically to sell them. Now, this had a big problem because number one, you never knew when this player was going to show up. So you basically had to wait around for them to pop in to buy a disc, assuming you even had money that day. We were all poor back then, just about. But it's even worse is that those players didn't exist on every single course. So if you played at a course where there wasn't a player selling discs out of the trunk of their car, you would go show up, hope that they made an appearance that day, and if they didn't, you were just out of luck. That is the only way you bought golf discs for many years. And I'll be looking down, by the way. I have notes because I don't want to miss the milestones in this story. But the only other place you got them was, like I said, at events. But events were limited to a player choosing to either sell them at the events and eventually custom discs, which I'll get to. In 1983, beveled edge discs started coming out, and you started seeing more discs available at events, but it wasn't a comprehensive set. The tournament director would buy 100 discs from one manufacturer. Innova was the big one, but Lightning, Discraft, Whammo, they existed. But if that was an Innova loyalist, for example, there'd be no Discraft discs at that event. There would be 100 of the Innova discs with a custom hot stamp. And if Innova at that time had 6 models out, the tournament director might have only ordered one disc with the hot stamp on all of them, or maybe 2 different models, 50 each with the hot stamp. It was far from a comprehensive collection. You took what you could get, and then your bag was filled not with the discs that you wanted, but with the best you could do with what was available. Now, this is why where the Fly Mart became such a big deal. The Fly Mart was the first took place at the World Championships. Now they have them at all these big tournaments, right? But at the World Championships, that was the one time and the only time that you had access to every model from every manufacturer. So at the Fly Mart at Worlds, it would be open, let's say from 7 to 10 p.m. People would be lined up outside the door while the vendors were setting up. And it was like Black Friday before Black Friday was a thing. The door opened up and it flooded. And I am not exaggerating when I say this. Poor players without a lot of money would save up for months and would bring $1,000 to the Fly Mart because this was your only chance to actually buy the discs you want in person. There weren't discs in stores. I mean, come on, the idea that golf discs would be in stores, that would mean that stores thought we were a real sport, and nobody thought we were a real sport. So forget about that. Fly Mart is where you got your discs. Now, somewhere around in the early days, and I don't know who came first, but a couple companies, Discovering the World and The Right Life, put out a catalog. And these catalogs were now the best thing in the sport to getting discs you want, because there was such a small supply of discs that the catalogs carried every single golf disc made. I mean, Innova has 7 models, and Discraft has 5, and there's some whammos and some shirts and hacky sacks and things. And then you have discs in certain weight classes, usually like say 165 to 169, 70 to 72, 73 to 75. That was the only choice you got. There was no such thing, not even a chance to pick soft plastic versus stiff, flat versus domey. Color choices out of the question in the early days. I mean, Discovering the World and The Right Life were the biggest companies at the time, but they didn't have 50,000 discs in stock with a full selection. They just had what was available. Now, these catalogs came out annually, which meant that if a disc came out this year, it's not going to be in the catalog till next year. So you actually had to work really hard to find it. Now, you could probably call on the phone. Maybe they have them in their retail store, but like that was it. I mean, you had to work to get your golf discs. Now, the first stores, to the best of my knowledge, that actually carried golf discs, for the most part, were actually the first pro shops. There was one I'm on the West Coast at the time, Morley Field, Snapper Pearson, Mark Horn at Oak Grove Park, Dan Mangoni at La Mirada. My West Coast bias means I'm unaware of the pro shops that opened up other parts of the country. So other ones were popping up as well. But these are, I mean, we're talking about either a small shed or a trailer that you drive up and you pull up the trailer and then take it with you. These things literally had several hundred golf discs in them. Mind blowing. People would come from all over to make sure they could go shop because, oh my God, you like 165 gram XDs? This store has 4 of them. Unheard of. You would buy all 4 because you might not find a XD at that weight for another year. But this is what you had to do. Here and there, retail stores started popping up. But they were very, very infrequent. It would be basically somebody at a gas station next to a golf course would say, hey, I'll buy 25 discs, put them on my counter, and turns out they sold. But occasionally stores started popping up here and there. But I'm going to tell you exactly how rare this was. In 1993, okay, we're talking 10 years after the invention of the beveled edge golf disc, 1993, I'm in California getting ready to go on tour, and I couldn't wait to get to Oklahoma because everybody knew that across the street from Will Rogers Park in Oklahoma City was a place called Fred's Liquor Store. And Fred's Liquor Store had a wall. No, I mean, not like a wall of like in a pro shop wall, but probably like 10 by 10 racks of golf discs. There was a store in Oklahoma City that carried golf discs, and we heard about this in California. That's what a big deal was. And by the way, we heard about it without the internet. So without the internet, the word got out to California. There's a store that carries golf discs. Of course, The Right Life and Discovering the World did also, but they had a catalog. We were aware of them. But oh my God, everybody knew about Fred's Liquor Store. It was famous. Now, again, stores started popping up periodically. But the big leap forward was, and forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, correct me in the comments, but I think it was Gotta Go, Gotta Throw connected with Play It Again Sports. And Play It Again Sports sold used sporting goods. So they were already buying and selling used golf discs because they bought used everything. Well, turns out people liked golf discs and disc golf. And so Play It Again Sports got on board, and next thing you know, I don't know how many it was, but like 100 Play It Again Sports around the country started carrying golf discs. And that was really this monumental occasion that a retail store is a chain, baseball franchises, but they're actually believing in disc golf, telling their other chains, we're going to buy and then we're going to distribute to you. I can't even begin to tell you what a big deal this was. By the way, once Play It Again had discs, that made it a lot easier to convince the local gas station or the other local sporting goods store or party store or whatever that they should carry golf discs because look, Play It Again does. They carry sporting goods. They have a golf disc section. Now, somewhere around this time, And this was another big moment in the history of the retail of golf discs. But right around this time, some of the big box retailers like Walmart, or and it might not have been Walmart first, it might have been one of the major sporting goods stores, started carrying golf discs. And this was mind boggling because it's one thing for Play It Again franchise to understand that this is a real thing, but this is basically validation from corporate America. And they started carrying Innova discs. And the reason they carried the Innova discs is because Innova spent God only knows how much money and time to go to these trade shows year after year and cultivated these relationships and built a familiarity. Um, you don't just go to like the Super Show in Atlanta and some sporting goods store says that looks like a cool product. I think we'll carry it in our 600 locations. No, there was a process, and to their credit, they made it work. The thing about it is, once a major sporting good chain carries our discs, every other part of this process of getting discs in retail stores simply is a matter of pointing to they're carrying golf discs. Look how big their store is. I think they know what they're doing. So it was a really big deal. Now, up until this point, somewhere around there, people were still selling out of the trunks of their car. And number one, there weren't stores carrying discs, but also the manufacturers, they still weren't huge companies at this point. Nobody wanted to turn down sales. If someone wanted to buy 100 discs, I mean, that's a sale of golf discs. But the culture had to change. And I don't know who was the first to do it, but Innova Discraft Lightning was already fading from the picture at this point. But a decision was made to stop selling to people selling out of the trunks of their car. And there was a lot of pushback against this because, someone might have been selling for years out of the trunk of their car, and that was a very frustrating thing to them. And by the way, I think some of these relationships that were long-term relationships, they still kept selling to them because it was like, they were friends from, way back. We were all friends in the early days. But it needed to go away from that. I mean, if we want credibility in the sport, we needed to be at stores, we needed to be in retailers, we needed to be taxed, we needed to be like every other sport. And the culture needed to change to where you needed to have, the tax ID, the resale license. You needed some accountability on how you sold these products. So that's where the culture shift it happened. Okay, again, a little bit hazy on the dates, but around the time we were finding our way into big box retailers while simultaneously phasing out the person selling from the trunk of their car, a company came along and said, well, we would like to sell out of the trunk of our car. Only it won't be a car, it'll be like a semi-trailer with 30, or I'm estimating, but 30,000 discs in their inventory. Lynx was the first traveling massive pro shop. It's an established business. It's not some person just selling discs. It's a real traveling retail store. And Lynx would show up for several years to events. They would arrange with the tournament director to provide prizes for the amateur divisions, and they would set up their full retail store at the event. And this was the precursor to what a ton of people are doing today, traveling around the pro tour with their traveling stores. And I think Dynamic probably actually made the biggest leap forward when they started running their traveling events around the country. But it all started with Lynx Disc Golf in the late 90s. Now, in the 90s is when the online stores started popping up. And I don't want to get it wrong when I say who the first stores were. I had two of the first stores, Disc Devil and the D Store. Both of them sold exclusively Discraft discs, which means basically I was the first factory store because I carried every single disc Discraft made. Probably would be quite a wealthy man right now if I had stuck to doing that. But it wasn't a manufacturer's store because it was just me choosing to be exclusively Discraft because of my relationship with Discraft. But I wasn't the first store. Other online stores had started popping up. It became a thing to build a store. Some people carried their own merchandise. Eventually, Lynx Disc Golf they started carrying the merchandise and doing drop shipping for companies, which allowed anybody to create a retail store, tap into the inventory. Not an original model, but that's the first time it happened in disc golf. Now, an interesting shift happened at this point, because in the 90s, if you're older, you'll know this, but if you're younger, this is going to seem foreign to you. But all the way up through the 90s and even the 2000s, the vast majority of manufacturers of products didn't sell direct to customers. Now, you make so much more money selling direct as a manufacturer. You have every motivation in the world to sell direct, right? I mean, for every dollar you make on a wholesale order, you would make $12 if you sold that product direct to the consumer. The margins are massive when you sell retail. The reason manufacturers didn't do this, not in disc golf, but in almost every industry, is in order to get into stores, you would protect your retailer by not selling direct. Meaning, if you're a retail store trying to choose which sunglasses brand to buy, you wouldn't carry a sunglass company where the person could buy direct from the manufacturer. You would buy from the manufacturer that wouldn't sell direct because they are protecting your retail account. It's the same reason why manufacturers wouldn't sell to the store next door the same sunglasses, because they're going to protect you as a retailer by giving you an area that's kind of like your territory. That was standard across every industry. And I don't know when the shift happened, but the shift happened to companies starting to sell direct. And once some companies started selling direct and realized that they were actually making money, not losing money because they lose that loyalty because they're not being a competitor, that kind of opened up the floodgates, and then all the other companies in that industry had to sell as well. Well, the same thing happened to disc golf, and whether it's through Amazon, whether it's through eBay, which could be independent retailers, or the manufacturers selling direct. This has become the norm. Manufacturers now sell direct to consumers, in not just disc golf, all industries. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, doesn't matter. That's what's happening. Now, in the last number of years, this has come up because pro shops or disc golf retail stores. So pro shops, maybe at the course, but a retail store not at the course, still call it a pro shop, have started popping up everywhere. There's disc golf stores all over the place now who are now in direct competition with the manufacturer, which is unfortunate for them because, in my personal opinion, the pro shops are the retailers and the entrepreneurs in this sport are the key to the growth of the sport. I mean, for years it was the volunteers, but now I think the free market, along with the volunteers, is propelling the sport forward. And like with my store, I'm gonna endlessly support these retail stores. I have to sell direct like everybody else because there isn't a retail store next to every disc golfer out there, and I want them to be able to buy golf discs, and I don't want to not sell to them. But I will always encourage people to contact their pro shop first, because that pro shop is the people in many cases that are putting new courses in. They're fighting cities. They're doing everything to make the sport better in your town. And as a player, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're not supporting them. So this is why, for my company, for example, I'm encouraging everybody to buy from me unless the local pro shop carries my discs. If the local pro shop carries my discs, I want you to buy from the pro shop. Who cares about margins? It's better for the sport and the growth of the sport if you shop locally, which I will encourage. But that's where we're at today. Manufacturers are selling discs. They're in competition with the pro shops. Generally speaking, I think the free market's a good idea. But for the consumer, which is you kids who have no idea how easy you got it, you just get to click a button or walk into the store and buy a golf disc. And that is a recent phenomenon in disc golf, I can tell you. Hope you all enjoyed this. Thanks, everyone.